I'm J.K. McKee, editor of Messianic Apologetics, www.messianicapologetics.net. Good evening from my office here in Dallas, Texas, and we are going to have what is actually a very serious messianic discussion on worship of Yeshua. Earlier today, our morning podcast live stream, which covers the divinity of Yeshua, addressed Isaiah 63 verse 9, and I promised you that because our study was very short, we would have a follow-up messianic discussion dealing with the issue of worshiping Yeshua. This is something that's very, very important, and it very, very much plays into the whole theological debate over whether or not Yeshua of Nazareth is indeed God. From time to time, I will be asked the question, I have heard it said that to worship Yeshua is to commit idolatry, and that we are only to, bow down to Yeshua. I need some help with the issue of the worship of Yeshua. There is a link in the description, and that's to our ministry's mini book, Confronting the Divinity and Messiahship of Yeshua, available in both paperback as well as ebook for Amazon Kindle. This is the kind of resource that you need to have in your library, in your congregational information center, when there are people who circulate in your congregation's midst, or people in your congregation encounter false teachings about the nature of Yeshua, and they are not only going through some doubt, going through some severe questioning, and they're getting ready to walk off the proverbial cliff, jump off the cliff. This is the kind of resource that you need to say, look, before you jump off, at least consider a few second and third opinions about some of these things you've been led to believe or you've been led to question. That mini book doesn't address everything, but it does address some very critical components involving the divinity and nature of Yeshua. One of the false claims addressed in this publication is to worship Yeshua as God is to worship another God. This is idolatry. How can you worship Yeshua as God? We are only supposed to honor or bow down to Yeshua. And so this is what we're going to be dealing with this evening. The thrust of the first commandment is quite clear in saying, you shall not worship them or serve them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children, on the third and fourth generations of those who hate me. Exodus 20 verse 5, and also Deuteronomy 5:9. This is a definite prohibition against idolatry, demanding that the Lord God of Israel be the only object of worship for the people, something repeated in any number of ways throughout the Torah. In Exodus 20 verse 5, the Lord instructs, Lo tishtachaveh, you shall not worship, as this is something that is to only be directed toward him. The specific verb that is actually employed here is chava, which the theological word book of the Old Testament informs us appears exclusively in the esh tafal stem, hish takava, to prostrate oneself to worship. Its entry goes on and explains how in language studies, formerly this was analyzed as a hitpael of shacha, cognate with the Ugaritic chava, to bow down, used in parallel with kaved, to honor. The verb appears 170 times. The majority of cases of the worship of God, gods, or idols. In the Greek Septuagint, Exodus 20 verse 5 appears with, Thou shalt not bow down to them, nor serve them, for I am the Lord thy God, a jealous God, recompensing the sins of the fathers upon the children, to the third and fourth generation to them that hate me. from Brenton's English translation. The verb that's rendered as either bowed down from Brenton's translation or do obeisance from the New English translation of the Septuagint is proskuneo, to make obeisance to the gods, fall down and worship, to worship or adore, from the Liddell Scott lexicon. Obviously, in the case of the first commandment, proskuneo has to relate to worship. Worship of other gods, also involving some kind of bowing down or performing obeisance or some kind of other related devotion, is strictly prohibited in the Torah. For the ancient Israelites, idolatry would not only merit capital punishment, but also incur reverberating curses being passed down to succeeding generations. So, if worship of Yeshua the Messiah is indeed idolatry, then many religious people, especially evangelical Christians who believe Jesus Christ to be divine, have a significant degree of curses associated with them. Yet, if Yeshua the Messiah is genuinely divine, being God, those who acknowledge him as Savior are necessarily required to worship him. Various actions involving the verb proskuneo are witnessed in the Greek apostolic scriptures in association with Yeshua the Messiah. A few of these actions do involve some kind of general honoring of Yeshua, but there are justifiable reasons to think that most of the places where proskuneo appears regard actual worship of him as Lord. And I have 9 verses we're going to review here. With the exception of the first one, I am quoting all of these from the 1995 New American Standard Update. The first one is Mark 5, verses 6 and 7 from the Revised Standard Version. And when he, being the Gerasene demoniac, saw Jesus from afar, he ran and worshipped, proskuneo him, and crying out with a loud voice, he said, "What have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I adjure you by God, do not torment me." Matthew 2:2, where is he who has been born King of the Jews? For we saw his star in the east and have come to worship, proskuneo him. And he sent them to Bethlehem and said, "Go and search carefully for the child, and when you have found him, report to me, so that I too may come and worship him." Matthew 2:8. Matthew 2:11. After coming into the house, they saw the child with Mary his mother, and they fell on the ground and worshipped, the verb proskuneo him. Then opening their treasures, they presented to him gifts of gold and frankincense and myrrh. Matthew 14, verses 32 and 33. When they got into the boat, the wind stopped, and those who were in the boat worshipped, the verb proskuneo him, saying, "You are certainly God's son." Matthew 28, verse 9. And behold, Yeshua met them and greeted them, and they came up and took hold of his feet and worshipped, the verb proskuneo him. Matthew 28:17. And when they saw him, they worshipped, the verb proskuneo him, but some were doubtful. Luke 24:52. And they, after worshipping, the verb proskuneo him, returned to Jerusalem with great joy. And finally, John 9:38, and he said, "Lord, I believed," and he worshipped, the verb proskuneo him. Whether the verb proskuneo is rendered as either worship or bow down in some of the notable passages which I've just quoted to you from the Gospels is undeniably something that is theologically motivated. Is Yeshua the Messiah worthy of an honor which in the Torah is only to be given to God himself? Of the examples I've just reviewed, the reaction of the demon-possessed man to Yeshua, Mark 5, 6, and 7, and the disciples on the Sea of Galilee. When the storm was calmed, Mark 14:32-33, probably immediately jump out at us the most. Are these just instances where various people bowed down or knelt to Yeshua as a sign of honor? Or were they instances when the divine authority that Yeshua exercised was being acknowledged, and the people present knew that Yeshua was no ordinary human being? There are a few places in the Gospels where the verb proskuneo appears, where worship of some kind is not really in view. Having to bow down may involve the physical condition of someone encountering Yeshua, or some kind of pleading. At least one example, that of the Roman soldiers taunting Yeshua, is a spiteful form of worship. And I have a number of passages for us to consider here. Mark 15:19. They kept beating his head with a reed and spitting on him and kneeling and bowing, the verb proskuneo, rendered in the New Living Translation as mock worship, before him. Matthew 8:2, and a leper came to him and bowed down, proskuneo, before him and said, Lord, if you are willing, you can make me clean. Matthew 9:18, while he was saying these things to them, a synagogue official came and bowed down, the verb proskuneo, before him and said, my daughter has just died, but come and lay your hand on her and she will live. Matthew 15:25, but she came and began to bow down, the verb proskuneo, before him, saying, Lord, help me. And finally, Matthew 20:20, then the mother of the sons of Zebedee came to Yeshua with her sons, bowing down, the verb proskuneo, and making a request of him. In order to get a fuller picture of how the verb proskuneo is applied to Yeshua the Messiah, consider the following additional places where it appears in the Greek apostolic scriptures, and I've got two references for you here. Hebrews 1:6, and when he again brings the firstborn into the world, he says, and let all the angels of God worship him, quoting Psalm 97:7. And Revelation 5:13 and 14, and every created thing which is in heaven and on the earth and under the earth and on the sea and all things in them, I heard saying, to him who sits on the throne and to the Lamb be blessing and honor and glory and dominion forever and ever. And the four living creatures kept saying, Amen, and the elders fell down and worshipped, the verb proskuneo. In Hebrews 1:6, we see a specific quotation made from Psalm 97:7, where it is asserted, let all those be ashamed who serve graven images, who boast themselves of idols, worship him, hishtakavu lo, all you gods. Now, the Hebrew kol Elohim was rendered in the Septuagint as hoi angeloi autu, in reference to God's angels, given some of the broad applications of the limited Hebrew term Elohim. The point made is that worship, which is directly intended for the Lord, or Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, Psalm 97:5-6, is here worship directed to Yeshua the Messiah. This is further intensified as Hebrews 1:8 informs us, but of the Son he says, your throne, O God, is forever and ever, and the righteous scepter is the scepter of his kingdom. Psalm 45:6, with the Son clearly referred to as God. Hebrews 1:10, also speaking of the Son, says, and you, Lord, in the beginning laid the foundation of the earth, and the heavens are the works of your hands. Psalm 102:25, with the Son also referred to as Lord. Both of these references should be recognized as affirming Yeshua as divine. Revelation 5:13 depicts John being shown the throne of God, with the Father and the Son, or the Lamb, seated together, and the elders issuing their worship. Worship of the Son does not negate worship of the Father. while it would be linguistically valid to render the verb proskuneo as bow down or kneel in relation to action performed by Yeshua, whether or not it would be theologically valid can and should be legitimately challenged. In one's deliberations over whether or not Yeshua was actually worshipped, one cannot deny when reverence or spiritual devotion was issued to Yeshua as depicted by the verb proskuneo. Yeshua did not make any effort to stop this. Yet contrary to this, there are some distinct places in the Greek apostolic scriptures where the verb proskuneo appears of a human being performing action to either another human being or an angel, and the opposite party makes a decisive point to halt the action immediately. So the three places to consider here: Acts 10, 25 and 26. When Peter entered, Cornelius met him and fell at his feet and worshipped, the verb proskuneo him. But Peter raised him up, saying, "Stand up, I too am just a man." Revelation 19, 9 and 10. Then he said to me, "Write, blessed are those who are invited to the marriage supper of the Lamb." And he said to me, "These are the true words of God." Then I fell at his feet to worship, the verb proskuneo him. But he said to me, "Do not do that. I am a fellow servant of yours and your brethren who hold the testimony of Yeshua. Worship, the verb proskuneo, God. For the testimony of Yeshua is the spirit of prophecy." And finally, Revelation 22, 8 and 9. I, John, am the one who heard and saw these things. And when I heard and saw, I fell down to worship, the verb proskuneo, at the feet of the angel who showed me these things. But he said to me, "Do not do that. I am a fellow servant of yours and of your brethren, the prophets, and of those who heed the words of this book. Worship God." The apostolic scriptures do demonstrate that Yeshua the Messiah was genuinely worshipped. In fact, the Father actually commanded it of his angels, Hebrews 1:6 and Psalm 97:7, meaning that worship of Yeshua is surely expected of human beings as well. Yet, where a human being is witness to have attempted worship of either another human being or of an angel, he is stopped from this action. One common argument that will sometimes be made by those who deny Yeshua, the Messiah, and him being worshipped as God, is that the verb latruo in the New Testament to render religious service or homage to worship from the Thayer lexicon is not applied to him. There's actually a very good reason why latruo seldom appears in relationship to Yeshua the Messiah. It is because latruo frequently renders the Hebrew verb avad, which itself tends to be associated with acts of cultic worship, such as animal sacrifice and other physical acts in the temple or tabernacle. Yet, it would be impossible to claim that the Greek verb latruo, with its Hebrew background via avad in view, is never applied to people serving Yeshua. The Theological Word Book of the Old Testament entry on avad informs us. It says this: the concept is used of serving Yahweh with the Levitical service, Numbers 3, 7 to 8, Numbers 4:23 and 30 and 47, Numbers 8, 11, 19 and following, latruo in the Septuagint, etc. Interestingly enough, the Septuagint reserved the Greek word, the official service of the priests only. The New Testament, however, steadfastly resisted using this group of words for the New Testament ministry or its functions, except in Romans 15:16, where it refers to Paul's labors for Jesus Christ. Instead, it reserved it for other religious contexts, especially for those dealing with the Old Testament ritual. Hebrews 9:21, Hebrews 10:11, and Luke 1:23, unquote. And I'm sorry, but I am profusely sweating right now. You don't see it, but I am. It's a hot topic. What can I say? While it is not common for one to encounter the Greek verb latruo, serve, in association with devotion to Yeshua, precisely because of its close association with the Levitical priesthood and its sacrifices, it is nevertheless witnessed. The associated noun, leitorgos, is used by Paul in Romans 15:16, where he says he is a minister of Messiah Yeshua to the Gentiles. It also has to be recognized that in some key Son of Man passages, John 9:35-38 and Revelation 1:12-18, in the book of Daniel, that the Aramaic verb pelak, pay reverence to, serve a deity, from the Brown Driver Briggs lexicon, was rendered with latruo in its Septuagint version. Daniel 7:13 and 14, I kept looking in the night visions, and behold, with the clouds of heaven, one like the Son of Man was coming, and he came up to the Ancient of Days and was presented before him. And to him was given dominion, glory, and a kingdom, that all the peoples, nations, and those of every language might serve, the Aramaic verb pelak, the Greek Septuagint latruo, rendered in the NIV as worshipped him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion which will not pass away, and his kingdom is one which will not be destroyed. As Robert M. Bowman Jr. and J. Ed Komazuski explain in their book, Putting Jesus in His Place, quote, the reference to all people serving the Son of Man is confirmed as an expression of religious devotion. The one whom you may regard as the ruler of your entire universe for all time is by definition your God, and it would be the height of folly not to render religious devotion or service to him, unquote. So, while encountering the Greek verb latruo in regard to Yeshua the Messiah is not common, the Son of Man, Yeshua the Messiah, who is granted the supreme authority by his Father, is indeed rendered worshipful service. If Yeshua is not God, then to worship him is indeed idolatry. However, the apostolic scriptures are clear that Yeshua was worshipped. When believers today worship the Son, they do worship God. But never should worship of the Son at all subtract from worship of the Father. After all, in Philippians 2:11, we see that every tongue will confess that Yeshua the Messiah is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. When people bend their knee and confess Yeshua the Son as Lord, the Father is glorified in all of it. Once again, this is excerpted from our Ministry's mini book, Confronting the Divinity and Messiahship of Yeshua. There's a link to it in the description. It's also available as an ebook for Amazon Kindle. Thank you for continuing to submit your different questions and inquiries, whether we present these issues in one of our Messianic discussion segments, where can I find it, mini live streams, or even for a new FAQ entry on our website. Really want to thank you for that, and please do keep your questions and inquiries coming. There's a lot of information out there on the internet about Messianic theology, Messianic spirituality, and there are plenty of things out there on the internet designed to get you to want to doubt whether or not Yeshua the Messiah is God. And Outreach Israel Ministries and Messianic Apologetics are very much equipped to help you with that. As always, on behalf of Outreach Israel Ministries and Messianic Apologetics, I would like to sincerely thank you for your continued offerings and donations, equipping us to provide services like these blessing people all over the world. You can sign up for a regular contribution at www.outreachisrael.net, or you can click the support link in the description. Good evening, and may God bless you.